This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Janet is away tonight. The parents of a 19-year-old who died outside of the PA last month are trying to piece together what happened in their son's final hours. They're looking for answers from the people they believe last saw him, but also from Mounties. The CBC's Rosanna Hempel brings us more.
Peter Charlette was a kind and motivated young man who had his whole life ahead of him. His body was found in a wooded area outside the PA last month. The 19-year-old's death has left his mother, Val, puzzled and shaken.
I feel like I'm not even here. Like I'm somewhere else. It's not real.
He was reported missing on February 24th. RCMP say he was last seen walking away from a home on Highway 283 near the Saskatchewan border in the afternoon. Peter's body was found a few kilometers from the house. Peter's family is questioning the circumstances leading up to his death.
Like, who leaves a house without their shoes and jacket? And it's that cold out, right?
And no phone.
Val began looking for Peter when she heard his friend had been contacted by a woman saying Peter had left her house. Val says she stopped at the woman's home trying to find him. Val says the woman's father told her that Peter had been drinking with his daughter before getting aggressive. His family says that's out of character.
Respectful, kind, helpful, courteous, great listener. He was all the things that a 19-year-old boy, you would always want them to be. He didn't do things to hurt others.
CBC contacted the people believed to have last seen Peter. They say they'll be releasing a statement. CBC isn't naming them due to the ongoing police investigation. They say allegations on social media, including a claim that Peter was dropped off on the highway, are incorrect.
And that family's been spoken to. Peter had a contact there. It is unearthed based on their discussions, and they're providing information to police. Peter was at that residence till approximately 3 p.m. When he left on foot.
Sergeant Paul Maneg says RCMP don't suspect foul play. They say the cause of death was a result of exposure, and they're waiting for toxicology from the medical examiner.
Even though his death might be due to exposure, now you have to investigate the circumstances around it. Like, say, how did he get to where he was? So that's all the pieces of the puzzle that are still being worked on. It is still an active investigation.
For Val, she wants officers to investigate foul play.
I am beyond frustrated. I'm angry.
Val and Walker are pleading for anyone with information on their son's final hours to come forward. They hope people remember him as a good man. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The government is pushing pause on grade 10 and 12 provincial exams for next year. A letter detailing the change was sent out by the Deputy Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning last week. The CBC's Alana Cole looks at what this means for students.
The change is happening next school year. The Department of Education and Early Childhood Learning says it's pausing grade 12 provincial exams and the provincial evaluation for grade 10 so they can review and redevelop the current program. Manitoba's education minister says it's about modernizing the system.
We need to know that what we're asking of kids is something that's going to prepare them for university or prepare them for whatever career they're moving into. And we want to make sure that our assessments are reflective of the need that's out there right now.
The information came in a letter sent by the Deputy Minister of Education. It says the provincial assessments will still go ahead this school year, then be halted next year. The head of Manitoba's largest school division supports taking a pause.
Some of the fears that are coming out of the province saying we're going to pause is that, exams are being canceled and how will students be prepared for post-secondary? Exams aren't being canceled. Schools will still have exams because that's one tool on the tool belt of teachers. But there's all sorts of ways that we assess students through conversations, through like sophisticated projects.
Anna Stockey, a math professor at the University of Winnipeg, calls the move unfortunate. She says it's important the province collects reliable data and says the province can review and update the system without canceling the tests.
They're a uniform measure to make sure that everyone is learning the material that we need them to learn so that we know that they're prepared for post-secondary or for other things in life. Those projects and assignments and school tests, those are important too. But standardized tests do need to be a part of a successful education system.
The letter outlining the changes says the overhaul will take multiple years. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba drivers could be getting another rebate check in the mail. That's despite Manitoba Public Insurance dealing with some major financial headaches, like a technology overhaul project that's well over budget. The CBC's Ian Fraze explains how drivers could still benefit financially.
You may remember a few years ago, Manitoba Public Insurance issuing rebate checks. The corporation could do that because it had fewer claims to pay out during the pandemic. But now those rebates could be coming back.
And we very much could be in a position of offering or providing a rebate in the future once our annual report has been audited.
New CEO Satvir Jatana spoke Tuesday at a legislative committee hearing. She says rebates will be considered at the end of this fiscal year if their reserves are high enough.
If everything goes as is, where the reserves are, then there's a good chance that our board will approve.
MPI's decision to give money back comes while the public insurer deals with other financial pressures. Its technology overhaul, Project Nova, is triple the original budget, now coming in at nearly $300 million. And MPI is still facing the cost of a 10-week-long strike, including $10 million in back pay and bonuses. Jatana says MPI cannot abandon the technology project.
We do need to rethink, replan, and we do need to deliver Nova. Not changing technology is not the answer for MPI.
She says little progress was made last year because of the strike and leadership changes. That disappoints the minister responsible for MPI.
The frustration there is that the instability that was caused by the previous government and their mishandling of MPI has had an impact on the rollout of Project Nova.
The PC say it was their government that tried to fix the outdated technology.
We were in government. We wanted to make sure to be proactive in getting the system done. And right now, the phase one has been completed. Now, we need a plan from the NDP here.
Right now, there's no timeline for completing Project Nova. Jatana says a new plan for the overhaul will be released this spring. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The City of Winnipeg is suing the owner of a long vacant apartment building in South Osborne. Residents in the neighbourhood have tried for years to save the Rubin block. CBC's Cameron McLean reports they want the city to act before it burns to the ground.
On May 21st, 2014, a fire broke out inside the Rubin block, the second time in 7 years. Since then, it has sat vacant, raising fears among nearby residents.
It's not a matter of if, it seems, it's more a matter of when it will burn again.
Jeff Palmer lives a couple streets away from the Rubin block. He wants the city or province to step in and take ownership of the building.
I do think that expropriation is a reasonable option. You know, it's not the first option that should be exercised, but after this amount of time, nothing else has worked.
Last week, the city filed a lawsuit against the owner, Composite Holdings. It says the company has failed to pay nearly $40,000 in inspection and empty building fees. The fines were levied against the Rubin block and this building on Assiniboine Avenue, also owned by Composite Holdings. CBC News has attempted to contact the owner, but the number listed is out of service.
The Rubin block is just one of hundreds of vacant buildings in Winnipeg. Councillor Shira Rowlands represents the area and chairs the city's property committee. She says the city has been trying to get tougher on vacant building owners.
Every neighborhood across the city is impacted by vacant or derelict buildings, or both, or buildings that have experienced fires. People end up being very concerned about it.
The city recently began charging owners of vacant buildings for the cost of fire responses, and to make it easier for property owners to demolish buildings that pose a safety hazard. Advocates like Cindy Tugwell of Heritage Winnipeg worry because the Reuben Block's heritage designation was dropped in 2014.
It is a beautiful building, and it's really a shame, and it's in a very conspicuous location.
The owner has not filed a statement of defense in response to the city's lawsuit. A trial date has not been set. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
We want to take you to some breaking news right now. Fire has consumed an apartment building on Toronto Street. This is near Notre Dame Avenue and Health Sciences Centre. Now, we don't have a lot of details yet, but we can tell you emergency crews were called here late this afternoon. Smoke and flames have been pouring out of this building as crews try to get a handle on it. Now, you can find the latest on this story as you head to cbc.ca/Manitoba, or of course by checking the CBC News app. A new report from the Right to Housing Coalition says the province already has the financial tools to address homelessness and the housing crisis. The 44-page report says the Manitoba Housing and Renewal Corporation already has strategies to increase social housing supplies. The corporation can borrow money at lower rates and have lower mortgages, both keys to financing social housing. The advocacy group says the government must provide more funding in the upcoming budget.
To wake politicians up to the resources they have under their noses and light a fire under them. They shouldn't be trying to think outside the proverbial box, forget the private market, quit looking for some magical formula. The only working strategy is inside the public and nonprofit box.
Right now, almost 6,000 low-income households are on the wait list for social housing. Brandon University debuted its new 9-foot Steinway grand concert piano over the weekend. The grand piano has been named Jack after former university president Harold Jack Perkins. His family donated the instrument to the university. School of Music professor Megumi Misaki got to play the piano at its first concert. Have a listen.
We're looking to showcase Jack in its absolute full glory. We're looking for pieces in music that will bring out the different colors, the excitement, the range of beauty and the range of grace that this instrument has, as well as its power. We're looking to really showcase the whole spectrum of colors and power that this piano affords us. We chose it for its diversity, we chose it for its range, and also right now, it's like wine. It's young, and it's just in the infant stages of becoming mature. And we know that this is going to mature into a beautiful, resonant, gorgeous, colorful, powerful instrument. Both Alexandra Tsalikoff and I, we went to New York Steinway to pick the first one. And we thought that this was going to be the piano of a lifetime, that this would be here making Brandon University School of Music be on the map for the place to be for piano, for chamber music. We hope with these two instruments that we can not only train our musicians to be ready for the rigors and the concert halls all around the world, but we can also invite the world's best pianists and artists and chamber musicians to come and celebrate their music and their vision on our beautiful instruments. So through our efforts, I believe our name is really resounding very strongly, and being able to say we have two of the most glorious instruments, the flagships of concert halls all around the world. We have two of them here in Brandon, Manitoba, at the School of Music at Brandon University. We're so fortunate.
Talent on that piano.
No
I
kidding.
certainly have no musical talent, so I'm very impressed by anybody's ability. Riley Laychuk joins us now. And Riley, so many parts of the province that are still cleaning up from the last snowfall that we just had, and we're not quite done.
probably don't want to hear the news that I have to give you, unfortunately. Staring down, yes, Brittany, a little more snow for parts of the province. Let's get right into it. So, yeah, we did enjoy a mainly sunny day across most of the province today. A little bit of clouds still lingering through parts of the north, and a little bit of fair weather cloud through southern Manitoba. Otherwise, a pretty calm day today. We have seen a few flurries spitting out of some of this cloud here through the Island Lake region that should taper off as we head through the evening tonight. But it's tomorrow where things get interesting once again. So looking ahead here as we start the morning on Wednesday, you can start to see some cloud cover starting to build into western Manitoba. Once again, by the time we get to the noon hour, that's when things get interesting. We start to see this system start to move into southern Manitoba, impacting first Brandon through the Verdon-Melita region before it moves further to the north, impacting the Winnipeg region, the Red River Valley, and into eastern Manitoba. That does clear out quite quickly, so by the time we get to the early morning on Thursday, we're left with just a mainly cloudy sky, some clearing back to the west, and northwestern Ontario getting some of that snow as we head into Thursday. Friday looking like a mix of sun and cloud. So this one has been a bit interesting because there's been a lot of model disagreement on what exactly is coming tomorrow. So I'm going to show you this, but take it with a grain of salt because things aren't necessarily lining up as you think they would this close to Wednesday. So this takes us out to supper time on Thursday, and you can see this forecast model giving us 10 to 20 centimeters across southern Manitoba. I think this particular one is a little bit on the high side. I think for the Red River Valley through southeastern Manitoba, we're looking at about 3 to 7 centimeters of snow, and more like 5 to 10 through parts of western Manitoba. So maybe a little bit more realistic, but we'll have a better sense once we get into the morning hours tomorrow. Winds will pick up, though, as we get into the day tomorrow as well. By the time we start the morning, we're looking at winds out of the northeast gusting to 50 in Winnipeg, 40 through the western part of the province, and that kind of stays, that breeze through the day Wednesday. As we head into Thursday, things do start to die off a little bit more once again, and we'll start to see some brighter skies. So minus 12, north winds at 10. Pressure is rising. We will start to see the winds picking up as we get through into the early morning tomorrow. We're looking at temperatures right around minus 15 for western Manitoba and into the minus 20s for parts of northern Manitoba. So we're looking at minus 16 overnight tonight in Winnipeg. A partly cloudy sky. Northeast winds at 10 overnight tonight, but picking up to 20. Gusting 40 first thing in the morning with clouds starting to build in, minus 14 in the morning, and then that 3 to 7 centimeters of snow, and minus 1 as we head into the afternoon tomorrow. So looking at the next few days, minus 7 with a clearing sky on Thursday. Friday, minus 4, and then rebounding to plus 1. Don't forget the time change, Brittany, coming your way on Sunday.
Ooh, we lose an hour, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
What does it take to become a national gold medal shot put champion? Well, we went straight to the source to find out. Anna McConnell is a 3-time shot put gold medalist. She's a Bison athlete and the defending U Sports national track and field champion. Those championships are coming to the University of Manitoba on Thursday. CBC's Jim Agapito had a chance to speak with McConnell about the sport and defending her title here at home.
Hi, my name is Anna McConnell. I am a student here at the University of Manitoba, and I throw shot put for the track and field team. Shot put is a throwing event. You have a heavy ball, basically, and the goal is just to throw it as far as you can. I started throwing in grade 10 in high school, about 8 years ago, I think. Honestly, I didn't start off loving it. It's just something I kind of did, and it just kind of grew on me. I never thought I was going to do university track. Coming out of high school, I played a lot of basketball, I played hockey, ringette, and I did throw a little bit of shot put and discus in high school, and then one of the throwing coaches for the university kind of approached me and was like, hey, would you be interested maybe in trying shot put at the university, like continuing? And I was like, sure, why not? And honestly, I was not very good at it when I started. Throughout my university career, kind of the better I got, the more I loved it. It's an individual sport, it's an individual event, so kind of whatever you put into it is what you're gonna get. I just stuck with it, kept going, trained hard, and I got better at it. About 3 or 4 days leading up to the competition, every day, just like mentally picturing what the competition is gonna look like, and then what my throw is gonna look like. I wipe my shoes down as soon as I get into the circle. I want clean base. I'm gonna walk to the back of the circle, take a deep breath. I'm gonna kind of get ready, bend my knees a little bit, thinking about turning and pushing my left hip up and forward at the same time. Then I can throw with my upper body and kind of push with my arm to fully finish. So I do like a little spin and then land. And then recover. I have won youth sports the last 2 years, and I won Can West, our division conference, this year and then the last 2 years. My season's best is 14.96. So for shot put, the distance I think is 13.33 meters. So if you throw over that, then you automatically get to come to nationals. To be able to win a third national championship at home in my last year would just be unbelievable. I have no words for it, honestly. I think it would be the perfect way to end off my throwing career at the university. Yeah, it would be amazing.
Health officials across the country are bracing for a rise in the number of measles cases. We'll show you where cases are popping up in Canada and what you can do to stay healthy. More after the break. With March break travel just around the corner, health officials across the country are bracing for a rise in the number of measles cases. Reported cases this year have already exceeded the dozen reported in all of last year. 17 cases have been confirmed in Quebec, Ontario, Saskatchewan, and BC combined. More than half of new infections are in the Montreal area and involve children. There are a handful of cases in Ontario and one each in Saskatchewan and BC. Infectious disease specialists say a small number of measles cases can escalate to widespread infections, as it has in Europe, where thousands are infected. Now, so far, there are no cases here in Manitoba, but health officials are warning people to make sure their vaccinations are up to date. Measles was eliminated back in 1998, but Dr. Joss Reimer says part of the reason for the comeback of the virus is a drop in vaccination rates. Reimer, who is now the president-elect of the Canadian Medical Association, says Manitoba is falling short on the 90% vaccination rate needed for herd immunity. She spoke with Marcy Marcusa on Information Radio this morning.
The big thing is really the decrease in vaccinations that we're seeing across the globe. I think with COVID, we sort of hoped that everyone would see how successful vaccines can be, and instead we saw a lot of misinformation. We saw a lot of people taking advantage of this moment to make money, to sell different products, and what we've seen instead is a decrease. Now, some of that's not around misinformation. Some of it's just because public health had trouble getting into schools, people were staying home, and so some kids just missed their regular vaccines. But whatever the reason is, the lower rates really give something like measles an opportunity to spread because it's so incredibly infectious. So it just needs a small window of susceptible people for it to be able to spread.
What are the symptoms? Remind us of the symptoms.
The big things you're going to see are, you get red eyes, you get flu-like symptoms, so just feeling really unwell, fever, muscle aches. And then there's that classic rash, and sometimes it's even in the mouth. So it's all over the body, in the mouth. What we really worry about, though, is the people who get more ill. And up to 25% of kids who get measles will end up in the hospital. So it's a pretty severe illness because you can get things like pneumonia. You can get encephalitis, which is an inflammation of the brain. And some kids will die with measles. So it's not a benign, it's not a minor illness. It is something we really worry about.
Because we've talked about COVID so much, and so everyone's used to sort of understanding the spread of COVID. When you say it's highly contagious, can you contrast measles to COVID in terms of how quickly this can spread when you look at the seriousness of measles?
Yeah, measles is one of the most infectious bugs out there. It's really remarkable because, for every 10 people who are exposed and are susceptible, 9 of them will get infected. So 9 out of 10 susceptible people getting infected is a very high number. And that's because it hangs out in the air. So not only can you get it from interacting with someone, face to face, but it'll stay in the air for up to 2 hours after someone leaves a room. So even if you never interacted with that person, if they happen to have been in the room that you're in 2 hours later, you still could get infected. And people are usually infectious before they have that classic rash. So they may not even know to avoid public spaces because they may not have those classic symptoms yet.
How many vaccine shots for full protection? Is it just the 2? And how does it differ by age group and such?
Yeah, that's a great question. So anybody who's born before 1970, we pretty much assume you're immune because measles used to be spreading all the time. So that you've probably been exposed already. If you're born between 1970 and 1985, then we recommend 1 dose. And most of those folks did get 1 dose because it was really regular to get a dose at that point. But double checking is a great idea. And then anyone born after 1985 should get 2 doses. Usually they're given at 1 year of age and again at sort of 4 to 6 years, so that preschool time. But some people may have missed a dose because of COVID, because of other reasons. And the really great thing is that all of the physicians in Manitoba have access to immunization records. So not only can you call your public health office, your local public health office, who can look that up for you, but your physician will also be able to look that up for you and tell you if you've had 0 doses, 1 dose, 2 doses, and they can help get you caught up if you need to be. We don't have measles in Manitoba yet, but what I'm really worried about is what we're seeing in Quebec. They've had a number of cases with no travel history. So that means they were exposed in Quebec. They were infected in Quebec. So it is spreading already in that province. And, I heard Dr. Singh from Public Health say it, but it's a plane ride away. And so when you mention spring break, if folks are going to Europe, if they're going to Quebec, many other parts of the world, It is possible to bring it back, and we know that our vaccine rates are lower than they should be. You really need about 90% of the population to be immune to prevent a measles outbreak, and we're not there.
Authorities in Tennessee today confirmed that 5 people who died in a plane crash there last night were Canadian. Their flight originated in Ontario and ran into trouble while approaching an airport in Nashville. The pilot of the single-engine plane told air traffic controllers he couldn't reach the runway they had been clearing for an emergency landing. The plane crashed on a shoulder of an interstate and burst into flames. And those on board died, including the pilot, another adult, and 3 children. Their names have not been released. An investigation is underway. CBC News has learned a survivor of the federal Indian day school system is taking her case to Canada's highest court. She's fighting to amend her claim for compensation from Ottawa's multi-billion-dollar settlement agreement. CBC's Olivia Stefanovic explains.
I was also ashamed to share my abuse and my trauma.
Margaret Swan reads one among hundreds of complaints she's gathered against a multi-billion-dollar settlement agreement she helped create and then quickly came to question.
I thought I would fall apart.
Not so long ago, Swan became a lead plaintiff in a class action against Ottawa for harms caused at federal Indian day schools. Institutions like residential schools, except children went home at night.
Students who attended these schools were subject to sexual, physical, and psychological abuse.
In 2019, a deal was cemented between day school survivors and the federal government. The cost was initially pegged at just over $1 billion, but CBC News has learned it's now close to $6 billion. Whatever the cost, the government says it wanted to do one thing better.
What we tried to do was simplify the process here in order that survivors had easier access to the settlement monies without necessarily having to go through the trauma that they had to.
They designed a claim process to avoid re-traumatizing survivors, headed by the claims administrator Deloitte and the law firm Gowling. All survivors had to do was fill out a form, and that's when problems began. It asked a lot, and for some, too much.
Felt traumatized again, victimized again.
You have reached Gowling WLG, class counsel.
And when victims reached out for help,
the period to file a claim has now closed.
They felt no one was there.
I felt compelled to just sign it, and I guess I suffered the consequences. That's the Waterhen School. Yeah.
Waldron hired her own lawyers to update her claim. She was denied. Now CBC News has learned they're asking Canada's highest court to intervene.
These aren't insurance claims. These are claims dealing with real people who were victims of abuse as children.
Both Deloitte and Gowling declined CBC's requests for interviews. When asked to respond over email to concerns about the agreement, a spokesperson said the firms can't comment on what they called third-party views. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
These stories can be difficult. Emotional support is available for anyone affected by residential schools. You can access crisis referral services by calling the 24-hour support line on your screen, going to Hope for Wellness hotline, or by heading to hopeforwellness.ca. A new report suggests more and more Canadians are struggling to pay monthly bills, especially when it comes to mortgage and credit card payments. And as Scott Peterson explains, the problem is acute in Ontario and BC.
What we're seeing from the survey is that higher interest rates are really forcing people into a position where they're unable to pay their bills, and delinquency rates, that's where people are not paying their bills over 3 months, is rising, starting with mortgage delinquency rates. And this is troubling in the sense that there's hopefully some equity built into the homes that people have bought. Over the last 12 months, mortgage delinquency has risen 52%. It's below about 1/10 of 1%, but the trend is clear that it is rising. Delinquency rates in Ontario and BC are particularly high because of higher mortgage costs associated with real estate there. In Ontario, it's up 135%, and BC up 62%. A delinquency is when someone hasn't paid their bill in 90 days. Now, younger homeowners under 36 are being particularly impacted, and for those refinancing now, this is part of the problem, that you might be used to lower rates that you arranged just a few years ago, but now monthly payments up $457 on average. And again, Ontario and BC, where it's a little bit more expensive, that can be closer to $700 extra per month on refinancing. Non-mortgage debt, and this is troubling as well. This is credit card debt. This is line of credits, where generally the interest rates are higher on. That is up 29% year over year. Now, it's still in the neighborhood of less than 1%, but again, the trend is that people are delinquent on paying those back. And part of the problem here is our thirst for credit. Non-mortgage debt, higher than all the others, was up 4% last year as we loaded up on credit cards and our line of credit, and it was up by $16 billion in total last year. New credit card growth was up 11% last year. 6 million new credit cards were issued. And part of the problem here is there's a double whammy, that one, we're paying a lot more interest, and it's tougher for a lot of Canadians to pay their bills from month to month, but we're also seeing increased spending, and a lot of that going onto credit cards and line of credits where the interest rates are prohibitive. Scott Peterson, CBC News, Toronto.
There's word there'll be at least one more day of talks aimed at establishing a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. Mediators say the most recent talks in Cairo have not delivered a breakthrough, but a Hamas proposal will be presented to Israel. The talks remain stalled over two key issues: the hostages and humanitarian aid. Airdrops of aid continued in Gaza today. The U.S., France, and Jordan have all airlifted emergency supplies into the territory. Aid organizations such as Oxfam and UNICEF are sounding the alarm about famine and starvation in the territory. Hamas has refused to release all of the estimated 100 hostages it holds and continues to demand a complete Israeli withdrawal. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has publicly rejected those demands and repeatedly vowed to continue the war until Hamas is dismantled and all the hostages are returned. Well, coming up, a major lender in Quebec says it will no longer provide new mortgages for people who live in some high-risk flood zones. The concerns for homeowners and worries other financial institutions could follow suit. More on that story after the break. There's growing concern among homeowners in some high-risk flood zones. A major lender in Quebec says it will no longer provide new mortgages for people who live in those areas. It says the risk is just too great because of the impacts of climate change. As Alison Northcott reports, there are worries more financial institutions could follow suit.
It started with the street right next to us. And
Tanya Carroll will never forget the 2017 flood.
we were woken up in the middle of the night by the firefighters, and we were rushed out.
Carroll lives in what's known as a 20-year floodplain, which means there's a 5% risk of flooding any given year. That's now considered too risky for Desjardins, a major financial institution based in Quebec. It will no longer offer new mortgages for properties on 20-year floodplains across the province. Residents like Carroll worry what the change will mean for the value of their homes.
If I do decide in the future to sell my house, what's going to be the chances that I'll be able to get what it's worth at that time? Will it be worth? Is that going to then, downgrade the cost of, the selling price?
Desjardins said in a statement the impacts of climate change, including water damage, are growing in importance and causing substantial damage. The company points out less than 5% of its mortgaged properties are in high-risk flood zones, but says homes in these areas are generally uninsurable, and it needs to account for the risks.
People might not be able to pay their mortgages if a major flood event occurs.
Several insurance companies have made similar moves, with more than 1 million Canadian homes deemed uninsurable for flood risk. If mortgage providers are next and others follow Desjardins' lead, there could be a huge impact, says this expert.
So you're going to have eroding and cascading effects throughout the residential housing market within given regions across Canada in these high-risk areas.
In the Montreal borough of Pierrefonds-Roxborough alone, the mayor says there are thousands of households in flood zones.
Will the other banking institutions follow suit? Which creates a major issue, because if you don't have cash at that point to buy a home, folks that have these homes will be stuck with them. The property value goes down.
Experts say it's another reminder that Canada needs to do more to adapt to avoid risks caused by climate change. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Weather specialist Riley Laychuk is back, and Riley, Manitobans certainly know floods well, and it is March. We normally start talking about flood time about this time of year, but not quite yet.
Not quite yet, partially because lots of southern Manitoba hasn't received all that much precipitation and is quite dry, but that also extends south of the border. Our neighbors in North Dakota also not getting as much precipitation as they would normally get so far. So
it's been a funny winter.
It's been a bit of a funny winter. We'll talk about funny winter, I guess. A bit of a trivia fact for you if you're into that sort of thing right now. Record-breaking warmth in parts of southern Ontario. So the daytime high today in Windsor, Ontario was 16 degrees today. Yes, this is way above normal. Yes, almost a record, but considering that Thompson got to minus 15 today, that's over a 30-degree difference, just one province over, and that's because of this cold Arctic air. Yes, making its way further to the south. So Ontario will get a bit of a taste of this as we get into the weekend. Behind that, some warmer air will flow into the prairies, but you can see where that cold air starts to sink down into the Great Lakes region. So yeah, Ontario will get a bit of a taste of it, but yeah, a bit of a warm day today. It's been a warm few days for parts of southern Ontario. Minus 12 at the Forks and in Eli at the moment. Minus 14 in Brandon, minus 19 for both Swan River and Roblin. And temperatures in the minus 20s for far northern Manitoba, Churchill at minus 22. So looking at your forecast for tonight, we're expecting partly to mainly clear skies tonight for northwestern Ontario, minus 14 in Kenora this evening. Same for the Red River Valley, temperatures of minus 18 in Gimli, minus 11 in the Emerson region, partly cloudy sky through the night tonight. Cloud starts to build in through the overnight period through southwestern Manitoba, minus 18 in Brandon, and minus 23 in Island Lake this evening, a minus 33 though in Shamattawa. Mainly sunny skies in northern Manitoba tomorrow. Temperatures around minus 10 for the Pawflin, Flon, and the Norway House region, but this is the region we have the snow moving in. So 5 to 10 centimeters along the international border, even as far north as Brandon with that minus 10 tomorrow afternoon. 2-4 for the Swan River region and Dauphin, with a chance, I should say, in the Swan River region. 3-7 for the Red River Valley is what I've got in the forecast for tomorrow. 2-4 through Arborg and Peguis and into northwestern Ontario. We'll start to see snow moving in through the later afternoon into the evening. Brittany, some warmer temperatures in your 7-day forecast coming up.
Looking forward to that. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
He's a rising star on the soccer pitch here in Winnipeg, but his story is one of pain and perseverance. How Amos Ruhondo rebuilt his career after being shot in a refugee camp as a teen. That story after the break. He's a rising star in Winnipeg's soccer community who, like so many other young athletes, lives for the game. But his life so far and how he got here is unlike anyone else's on the soccer pitch. His story is the latest in our series from aspiring filmmakers taking part in Sisler High School's Create program.
He'll do absolutely whatever it takes, throw his body on the line. It reminds all of us that we need to do the same.
Amos legend, I would say.
Industry.
My name is Amos. I'm from Congo, and I was born in Rwanda as a refugee. So what I remember when I was a kid, I used to fight with my mom cause of soccer. I like to play like soccer with my friends. That's why I didn't like to go to school when I was a kid. I started playing soccer when I was a little kid. I tried, but I didn't have like coach to coach me like how to play soccer. You know, I can say just like a talent. When I was 10, in the refugee camp, they chose me to play for other countries like Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania teams. See, what is it? How I got shot? I was with my friend. They shot him and then he died. But you know, I was lucky because the bullet like hit this part and it didn't go through. That's why I'm able to use this leg. So when I play soccer, like all the stress goes away because, you know, when you are in the field, you focus on playing soccer. You forget like the stress you have, like other things. You just focus on soccer.
Amos has improved tremendously. Everyone would agree that over the course of the past, 2.5 years, he's become an extremely important part of the team. I think that he has a lot of talent, and through hard work and dedication, I think he could become an even better player.
Because I was like professional player, because they used to pay me, but here in Canada it's different. I have to pay to play. That's the difference. I love soccer because I grew up playing soccer, and I also playing professional back home in Rwanda, and that's motivated me like to keep playing till now. In the future, I hope to be a professional player and help my family and the kids who want to be professional.
That piece was created by Sisler Create students Teki Gabreha Waryat, Fateh Brar, and Kirill Jazz Cruz. Still ahead, Riley Lachak is back with your 7-day forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
So yes, Manitoba expecting a little bit more snow as we head into the midweek. So starting Wednesday with the clouds starting to build in, and by the lunch hour, we start to see the beginnings of that snowfall in extreme southern Manitoba. Areas like Brandon, Melina, Verdon starting to get some snow, and that moves into the Red River Valley and into Winnipeg and the Interlake by the time we get to the supper hour. As I mentioned, about 3 to 7 centimeters, I think, is what we're looking at for the Winnipeg region, maybe up to 10 further to the west. So we're looking at a high of -1 tomorrow, southeast winds gusting to 40 in the afternoon, so that could cause some blowing snow issues. Looking into Friday, -4 with a mix of sun and clouds. Don't forget to put your clock forward on Sunday with a high of 1 degree, Brittany, maybe a bit of wind as well, and all the way up to +6 on the way for next Tuesday. Well, a new exhibit in London features recreations of some of the world's most famous artworks.
And you might say they're a chip off the old block. Here's your Daily Lift.
This exhibition is my artwork that I've made entirely out of Lego bricks.
The Art of the Brick exhibition is made up of more than 100 works built with 1.5 million Lego bricks. American artist Nathan Sawaya has spent more than 20 years painstakingly gluing and snapping together the colorful little blocks.
Now, he builds his own versions of classical sculptures, as you see there, and well-known paintings as well, and creates original works. Shows are underway in Paris, Miami, and Philadelphia.
Those are incredible.
What would happen if that fell over?
Oh my goodness, I don't even want to think. These are Legos that you don't play with after the fact.
Yeah.
But you know what? To all those kids out there that play with Legos, look, you can make a living out of it.
Exactly.
Right? Have a wonderful evening. We'll
ya.
see you back here tomorrow.